Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Allison Moy. I'm the president of the Dish Women's Network. This month marks 4 years since the launch of the Dish Women's Network. Thank you. And I'm also proud to say that we just reached over 1,500 members this week. So thank you so much. That's in huge part to you guys. And we couldn't be more excited than to celebrate these milestones today by welcoming and hearing from our latest board member, Kathleen Abernathy.
Hello. Thank you.
So Kathleen joined the Dish Board of Directors in April 2019. She is a leader and visionary in the telecommunications industry.
Who knew?
Yeah.
I know.
With extensive leadership in both the public and private sectors. Kathleen's career highlights include her appointment as an FCC commissioner, serving on the Frontier Communications Board of Directors, and subsequently served as its chief legal officer and executive vice president, regulatory and governmental affairs. Serving on the board of directors of Somos and ISO New England, and is a senior industry and innovation fellow with Georgetown University's Center for Business and Public Policy, McDonough School of Business. So,
Yeah.
yes, big credentials.
That's a lot.
So Kathleen brings a diverse viewpoint to the Dish Board, not only as a woman, but with her years of experience at the FCC, Frontier, Georgetown University, and more. Many studies, including the Harvard Business Review and McKinsey & Company, show that companies benefit from having a diverse board and a diverse workplace. Diversity brings different perspectives, increases innovation, leads to better decision-making, and shows increased profits. And Dish Women's Network strives to empower women to bring their voices to the table, to best build our future and represent our diverse customer base. And as we look towards an exciting future in wireless, with curious minds and a desire to win, we'll continue to deliver opportunities to hear from women who have changed our industry, just as you will hear today. Moderating our fireside chat is Candy Ergen, a Dish co-founder and member of the Dish board since May 2001. I've had the pleasure of working with Candy. I've had the pleasure of working with Candy over the years and look forward to hearing some great insight from her today as well. This is a critical point in our corporate history, and to have our 2 women board members here to enlighten us today with their views on key topics is certainly an occasion to be celebrated. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kathleen and Candy.
Wow. So special.
Yes, so thank you for being here. Some of you remember I did this one other time, so you have to give me a little grace because I don't usually do this, and it makes me a little nervous to see all the faces in the room. But I think the important thing to talk about is how important our future is to us, and I think the past informs the future a little bit. So I would like for Kathleen, for you to start with sharing a little bit about how it all began. And I think people are interested in what decisions you made along the way that shaped your career, and talk a little bit about failure. I have a very strong belief that failure makes you a better person if you embrace it and learn from it. And could speak to that offline if you wanted. But I think that everybody wants to hear a little bit about how your career trajectory took place.
Well, first of all, such a privilege to be here, and I consider myself incredibly fortunate to be on the board of Dish with visionaries like Charlie and Candy and the rest of the team and all of you, because this is truly a company that defies predictions and defies gravity or logic. And that makes it a lot of fun. So I actually grew up in Kentucky in a large Catholic family, and decided to leave. Decided that in about the 7th grade that I would die if I had to stay in Kentucky. Now, I don't know why.
Good thing Joe Clayton's not here to hear her say that.
I know. Joe and I did bond. He loved it there. it was, and who knows why certain people are certain ways, but for me, I just wanted to see more. And luckily, I had great role model in my mother, who had 5 children, because she didn't know any better right away, within 6 years, 5, within 6 years. So I would say not a great idea, but we could field teams, and it was, and she ultimately went back and got her master's and became a high school principal. So she was a great role model. My grandmother was a great role model. She was born in 1900 and worked her entire life for the YWCA, like in a management position. And she was a first-gen immigrant. So they were great role models. I had their support when I wanted to go off and do other things. And then I made mistakes along the way. But that launched me with a belief that I could do many things. So then when I went to college, and then I went to night law school, and then I tried certain careers in between, I had a family that, when I would call crying, would say, no, it's all going to be fine. Or my dad, who would always say, just come home. So that wasn't great. But I think that foundation, what I found with people that are successful, they didn't necessarily have the best education. They didn't necessarily have all the opportunities in the world, but they had someone supporting them at some moment in their life, telling them, you can do more of what matters to you. Not you have to do what other people define as success, but you can build your own path and go the direction you want to go. And by the way, when you fail, everybody fails. It's the ones who pick themselves up and double down that are okay. And the ones who crawl in a hole, they're not okay. And so be the one that picks yourself up and moves on. So that was kind of the framework that I had.
So I think when you talk about picking yourself up, and I think a lot of people mistakenly see failure as something that they can't recover from. I think all of us should be thinking about failure as a way to learn and a way to maybe discern a little different path. You know, obstacles are something to go over, under, around, and through. When you think about maybe the biggest obstacle you've seen in your career, other than a dad telling you to come home, which I totally understand.
Very sweet.
My dad was telling me to keep going, but he was great. My dad was great, because my dad actually, so I think for anybody who has maybe not necessarily just parents, but supportive people in their world, there's a really great push-pull, because if you're an important part of a family, they want you to be part of the family. They want you to be around.
Right.
But they also support you in whatever way they can, right? Whatever, everybody has their own thing. They support you going out and doing whatever it is that will make you happy and successful and a better part of the world. But it's a really tough push-pull. And I think, most of you are nodding. It's obviously, for me, that's been a huge part of my adult life, is the push-pull. And I think probably one thing most people are asking is, how did you sort of manage the push-pull of family and career, and what you want to do versus, we had coffee before we started, and we were talking about how some people in the world get to say, I want to do what I want to do, and therefore I get to do that. And other people don't, and we will not differentiate in this room between who that is, because it could be anybody. But how do you manage to have the kind of career that you've had and the kind of opportunities that you've had, and still have a family? And we talked a lot about the fact that you can have it all, you just can't have it all at the same time. But I think most people are not. Most people are nodding and smiling. Can you talk a little bit about that for you?
Sure. And the other thing I'd say is, this was the career that I wanted. And I would never say this is the career people should have, because everybody, I love working. I'm a workaholic. It's been in my DNA since I was a kid. I just thoroughly enjoy going in, working, looking at things, working through them, and other things I don't enjoy as much. So when I talk about my career, I talk about it from the context of my DNA works with how my career progressed, and I would hope that everyone else looks at it and says, you know, this is what I want to do with my life. And it really came clear to me recently with my daughter, who's getting married, and anyway, it's all good, and I'm so proud of her, and she's very bright and smart and strong-willed. And she said to me one day, she said,
Wonder where she gets that.
I know. And her dad's, yeah. So,
Strong-willed is the end of that sentence.
yeah. And she said to me one day, I love everything you've done with your career, but let me tell you what I'm going to do. Let me tell you where I'm going to find my joy, where I'm going to find my success. I said, fine, you know. I hope it's not, you know, in another country so I can't see you. But so she talked about what was important to her, and that's exactly right. So I would say that what I found is a couple things came together in my career that led me to where I was able to go. One was I married a great, understanding guy with a very flexible career. He's an academic. That meant that he had amazing amounts of flexibility in his schedule. And that meant that when opportunities presented themselves to me, he could support them and say, we're fine. You know, go take advantage of that because we're fine. So that was one piece of it. The other piece is that I only had one child. And so, again, more flexibility. I just happened to only have one child, and I happened to have her later in life. So when opportunities came along when I was younger, I could make the sacrifices, put in the long hours, do what needed to be done to be at the top level. But it's not cost-free. Nothing's cost-free. So it's not that I don't want men, women, minorities to aspire to things. I just want people to aspire to what they want to do. And I also believe that there's even greater flexibility now for people in the sense that you can have an entire 3 different careers probably, because you'll probably, I hate to tell you this, you'll probably be working till you're 70 or 80, because we all live so long. So who's going to support you if you say, you know, I want to retire at 50, and someone's going to support me for 40 years? I don't think that's really going to happen. So that's the beauty of it, is that you can almost have, you can say, you know what, right now I want to concentrate on this aspect. I want to be an artist, and I want to be an artist for about 15 years, and then I'm going to go get another degree, and then I'm going to do something else. Or I want to raise a family right now, or I want to travel and have really funky jobs for a while, and then I'm going to go do something else. So that's the beauty of it. But I guess I would say that every successful career means that you are making hard choices and sacrifices. And my husband said this to me when I was an FCC commissioner, and I didn't want to believe it, but it was in fact true. He said, you know, when you're going to be a commissioner for these years, it's going to be all about you. It's not going to be about me. It's not going to be about your daughter. It's going to be all about you. And just know that you're making that choice. And I said, okay. And he said, go do it. But there are moments in time when you make choices like that, and then later on, you back away, and later on, I made a bad decision. This is learn from your failure. I've probably had 10 career professional jobs, 10 to 12, something in there. I only took one for money, only one job. I turned them down twice. They came back with more money. I should have listened to my instincts, which were, don't take the job. I took the job. It was a disaster. I barely lasted a year, and then I had to back away and regroup. So, I mean, that was probably one of my biggest life lessons is, you know, if you work hard, someone will pay you for the hard work you do. Don't take a job just for money, unless, you know, there are circumstances where maybe you have to. But for the most part, if you have a good job, and someone else is trying to entice you away and your instincts are saying, don't do that, don't do that. You know, trust your own instincts. And
I would say that's probably one thing that you should all hear again. Trust your own instincts, because you know yourself, or you should be finding out about yourself, and you know in your heart when something feels right and when it doesn't. And you should listen to that. And I think lots of times people worry about what the job trajectory or the career trajectory is going to be. In my case, who would have ever thought? No one. People ask me all the time, did you think that Dish was ever going to become what it is today? If I had thought that, I would have run into a dark hole and said, I can't do this. But you put your head down, you work hard, you do the right thing, you have beliefs and values that you are intrinsic to you, and you don't deviate from them. Right. You don't ever deviate from them. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself, I have a new car that has a thing that says, you know, you're getting too close to the line.
Lane assist.
And so, yeah, and so, see, who knew? And and it jerks you back into the lane, and it's really scary because
I don't know,
I don't like it, but
I'm a bad driver.
But you, I'm told you can turn it off. I'm not that technologically savvy. But I didn't go to the class on that either. But my point is that you have that in your heart and soul. Everyone has it if you pay attention to it. Do not stop paying attention to that lane assist. Because if you find yourself going outside the lane and taking a job for a reason that is antithetical to who you are, that lane assist should cause you to correct. It may take a year, but it will cause you to correct, and you should listen to that. And I firmly believe that you never take a job for money. You take a job for the people that you work with and the challenge of the project or the company, or whatever. All those things play into why you take a job. And I never had a choice to take a job for money, because I didn't get paid in the job I had very well before Dish. Then I obviously didn't get paid for a while for that either. But I think you all should think really hard about what Kathleen said about what you want to do, what your career should look like for you and your circumstances and your family and whatever, versus saying, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be the whatever. That's not necessarily wasn't my path, and wasn't yours either, really. So we're going to talk for just another minute or two, and then we're going to open up for questions.
And I wanted to talk about one other thing for people who are charting a career where they say, I know I want that next opportunity. I want to position myself. I want to be in the C-suite. I want to be on a board eventually. One of the things that was very important in my career that I learned a little late, but I was with a group of women board members recently, and we all agreed that if that's where you see yourself, then risk-taking and pivoting in your job and doing different things even at the same company, maybe at different companies, is very important. Because if you stay in the comfort zone, then you won't gather the skill set that you need to take that next leap. But every time I took a new job, your stomach hurts, you're tense, you're not sure if you can do it. You believe you can, but you double down to make sure you do it really well, because otherwise, that's another failure moment. And occasionally, like I said, I took a job that was a mistake. But I think risk-taking, if you see that as your career, is essential to that movement, because those jobs give you the skill set that you need, that when they're looking to hire someone, all of a sudden you come in and you have marketing experience and financial experience in HR, and maybe you've worked in product development. So all of those kinds of choices become very important as you're looking long-term career decisions.
I think you should be thinking about what the next thing you don't understand is. What's the next thing that I don't know how to do? And be intentional about how to figure out what that is and how to go about getting some experience that way. Hopefully you feel that that's possible here. I think learning new things, that's why we added curiosity to PAW, because curiosity about what other people are doing. Ask questions, talk to people. One thing I wanted to touch on was mentors, and I didn't really have a mentor, but I always had good relationships with people around me, and I was very blessed to be able to reach way outside of my little circle of the world to talk to people about what they were doing and why, and I'm always curious about why somebody wants to do something too. So I think asking questions and taking risks to maybe get outside of that little comfort zone is better. The last thing I want to talk about, because people are interested in board experiences and serving on other boards and why you decided to join this board, and I'd like you to tell your story about that.
Sure. So I have known Charlie since I was an FCC commissioner and known his company that amount of time. And I've also known Mike Dugan, who's at EchoStar, and I served on a board with Mike Dugan. So there's two paths for getting on boards. One is you build all your credentials, and then the other is a pretty deep network of people that you've worked with, that you respect and that you admire. And then when you're on boards, they'll know to think of you. So Mike came to me about possibly...
Frontier board.
Yeah, I was on the Frontier board, sorry. I was on the Frontier board with Mike Dugan. And then that's how we became friends, and then we stayed connected. And then he came to me about potentially EchoStar. I then came in, spoke with him, spoke with Charlie, spoke with Candy. And when the opportunity to think about joining the Dish Board came along, that was sort of the mothership. Because I love the way Charlie thinks. I love the way he looks at the world. I love that he looks ahead. I've worked for a number of really good CEOs, but one of the handcuffs that most CEOs have is quarter-to-quarter earnings. And that drives companies to have to do certain things that don't ensure that they're there in 10 years, but will deliver the quarterly earnings that the people in Wall Street want to see and demand. So his ability to look at the world and think about where he wants to take it, and his vision for wireless, and my first corporate experience was in AirTouch in the wireless world. And I've always loved that space. In my mind, that's such an exciting place, and to have seen it grow up way back when, and then to see how Charlie thought and thinks about what we're going to do next with it, to me was just an incredible opportunity. And I would say that at a certain moment in my life, and I probably waited too long for this, but I probably by my 50s, 40s maybe, I said, I only want to work with people that I can learn from, that will make me better, a better person, more talented, make me think harder, make me work harder. And he's got that vision thing going. He knows what he wants to do with this company. It's got great bones. He sees both the weaknesses and the opportunities, and some CEOs don't see the problems, and then they can't pivot and do what they need to do. I compare it to one of my life lessons is that time is usually not your friend. If an employee isn't working out and you think, well, I'll just give it another year, it's not going to get any better. It'll probably get worse. You know, if a product isn't working out and it's really lousy and it's not working and you just don't want to deal with it and you kick the can down the road, it probably doesn't get any better. And so I like that he has that realistic vision of what are we going to do and how are we going to get there, along with the long-term belief that we can do anything we put our minds to. So this was a great opportunity with just a fantastic senior team and other board members, and I feel very privileged to be on this board.
That was great. Sometimes I guess I should always be reminded that, you know, I get to see that every day and everybody doesn't. So it's nice to hear somebody from the outside. Kathleen's been great. We were talking about it this morning, that she asks good questions. The thing about our board that I want to bring the rest of the board to this group over time, because we have amazing board members that are really insightful and smart and ask really good questions and really hone the thought process. You know, one of the things about our senior team is we try really hard to ask each other the hard questions, but it's always better to have somebody from the outside say, have you thought about this? What about that? And it makes you smarter and better. And I'm blessed to also work with smart people and always I only want to work with smart people. It drives me insane. And you know, one of the privileges of being older is that you can say that because you realize you're definitely on the back nine, even though you guys are going to be working longer. You know, you think at this stage of my life and my career, I only want to work with people that I like and smart people and the people that make me smarter. And so I think that's one good thing that we share, and one of the things we talked about in our first conversation a long time ago. I think we have about 30 minutes, which I wanted to leave as much time as possible for you all to ask questions. We can keep talking from now until hell freezes over if you want us to, but we might not be talking about the things that make up your day and your list. So we'll open it up to questions, and I'm sure there's somebody with a question. I got this whole list of questions of things, you know, that I didn't cover, so.
And we're going to do a mic to who's asking questions so that everybody on the phone can hear as well. It's something we've gotten feedback on. So I'll be passing the mic around.
Hi, first of all, thank you guys both. This is awesome. My question is, you talked a lot about doing something that you don't know how to do as part of career growth. I'd love to hear an example of when you did that in like more specificity.
Sure. So my first corporate job was, I had been a staffer at the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, which regulates the whole technology sector. And I loved working at the FCC. I was surprised at how much I thoroughly enjoyed it, how much I was learning, and I was in a very good space. And I was doing all wireline work, meaning telcos primarily. And that was my area of expertise, and that is what I knew. And the job offer I had came from AirTouch, and they wanted me to open up the DC office for all things wireless. And I knew nothing about the wireless world. And it's really very different, and different challenges, and it dealt with spectrum and just lots of things. So I was very, very nervous, and this is typical. How many men are in here? So I'm now going to generalize, which is a little dangerous. But I have seen this in many women. We'll look at our resume and they'll say, I need these 9 qualifications to apply for this job. Oh, I've only got 8. I don't have 9. I won't apply for the job because I don't have 9. The guy will look at it, he'll have 3. Oh, I'm so qualified for that job. So
Does anybody agree with that?
No, but that's not their problem, that's our problem.
That's right.
Let me be clear. I don't blame anyone other than myself for that. You need to step up and say, I can do that. And I did do that, but it took some prodding from some friends, from my husband, to say, are you kidding me? You know these people in this arena. This is what you do well. It'll be a great opportunity. I remember when I took the job, a couple people said, I just think that's such a huge risk for you to take that job because, you know, that wireless stuff
what
is
if it doesn't work out? Like
and you won't have a job in a year. And I said, well, I'm young enough. I'll find another job. But that is part of what we have to tell ourselves. Don't be crazy about it and say, well, I've never, done tightrope walking, but how hard can that be? I mean, don't do that. But you do have to appreciate that you've developed certain skills along the way and that you can do more and you can take these risks. And it took me a while to sort of get in the rhythm of doing that.
I also think skills are transferable, right? you learn the basic set of skills. It doesn't matter what the widget is that you're selling. That was the guy that 40 years ago when I was in graduate school, he said, you can sell widgets. I said, what's a widget?
I did too.
You know,
First time.
what's a widget? It doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter what financial analysis is. Charlie started out analyzing Doritos. So how many Doritos should go in every bag? But, and then they realized that he realized they didn't need him. They could just increase the price of Doritos and people would continue to buy them because you can't eat just one. But I think one thing that this is a generalization too is that we tend not to think about the way we acquire skills, and that when you have skills that you acquire in not-for-profit boards, in parenting, in classes. So I think everybody needs to look at it as a holistic picture instead of, I know how to do this one thing at the office. Not relevant, right? I know how to do all of these things, because if you can manage children, you can manage teenagers, there's not a lot of, I mean, people get upset if I say that, but it's true. It's managing people, and it's leading people to do things that you need them to do in a way that is advantageous for both of you. And when you talk about negotiating, so I watched this for the last 6 or 8 weeks up close and personal, every day, 10 times a day. So this whole negotiating between the DOJ, I don't know, might be out on a limb here, all of the parties to this transaction. The ongoing conversation was around how do we make it so this, and every day Charlie would leave and I would say, this needs to be win, 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 win. Everybody needs to win. And how do you craft an agreement where everyone wins? The states win, they just don't know it yet. Not all of them know it. That everybody in every party to this needs to have a win. And if everybody walks away from any negotiation, whether it's with a teenager or a 3-year-old or the DOJ and Sprint and TMO, everybody needs to be just a little uncomfortable with the final decision, because if everybody's just a little uncomfortable with it, it means everybody got what they need. And your life is exactly the same as that, right? It doesn't matter. You need to think about where you're acquiring skills and how your skills are transferable in all the areas of your life, no matter what it is. And you can do, I was taught, my dad, who didn't necessarily want us to come home, said, you can do anything. And I graduated from high school a year after Title IX. So it wasn't abundantly clear up until that year that women actually could do anything. And he said, pick where you want to go to college and then go there. Pick what you want to do, pick the best college for what you want to do. Of course, I had no idea what that was, but the point I'm making is you can do anything. You have to be intentional about it. I personally think that if you set a goal, it shouldn't necessarily be to be doing a particular job. That's not my thing. That might be yours. But you didn't have any idea where you were going to go with your career. And you just take advantage of opportunities as they come along. And next question. Could you identify yourself when you ask your question, though? That would be helpful to us.
Hi, Candy. My name is Suma, and I'm the Chief Digital Officer, joined DISH 6 months back, and spot on with the teenage...
For the second time, I should add.
Second time, yes. Spot on with the teenage thing. Once you negotiate anything with a 16-year-old, DOJ becomes super easy. So my question is, again, I think you answered most of it, which is the skills get transferred between jobs. You know, you learn the basic skills. But I come from the public sector, too, and I was very curious, Kathy, on your greatest experience learning from public sector and private sector, and how each of those experiences shaped one another. So.
Great question.
I think it's really unfortunate now that there's this belief that you shouldn't move between the public and the private sector. I'm a firm believer in public service. I think if good people don't go into public service, shame on us as a country, because that is critically important to who and what we are as a country. So I love doing public sector work, and I will tell you this, that being in the private sector, when I then went into the government, I went in 2 different times. So I was in the government after about 7 years as an attorney, 6, something like that. I went into the government working for the General Counsel's office at the FCC, and then ultimately being a legal advisor to a couple of commissioners. I understood how the private sector thought. I understood that you can't expect companies to do things that will ruin them financially. That is a bad decision, because they employ people and they pay people, and we want them to continue to do that. But at the same time, I also was able to appreciate when I was in the government that there are certain public policy objectives that the private sector will never focus on, and therefore it's very important for government officials to engage with and work with the private sector to deliver the greatest value. So you have investment and innovation and creativity at the same time that you're protecting against monopoly power, and you're protecting against discrimination, and you're ensuring that if it's not a very competitive environment, that prices are fine. So each time I went in and out of government, I learned more, and I learned more about the private sector and my ability to bridge the gap and converse with both, and then forge compromises, because I kind of got what was going on, was terrific. And that's when I really found my sweet spot, that's what I love doing, reconciling corporate policy goals and public policy goals, and how do you make them work together. And there's almost always a path that makes sense. Sometimes you get it wrong and you have to go back and have a do-over when you're the regulator and say, well, that rule, not only did it not achieve what we wanted it to achieve, it actually had unintended consequences that are really bad, so we have to fix it. So I also became a bit of a believer that less is more. Because every time you put pressure on this point, it has another reaction over here. So to the extent that you can rely on private forces with a government overlay, the odds are that's probably the best approach, but that's, again, a generalization. But I encourage, I mentor kids in college and in law school, and I always tell them, if you can find a way to move in and out of government, A, it's good for us as a country, and B, you will be better, a better worker overall, whether you decide to stay in government or not, just because of the skills you'll acquire in both.
Great.
Hi, I'm Megan Prater. I'm actually an intern, and there's like at least a couple others here, so I'm just curious from your perspective if you could give yourself like kind of at the beginning of your career a piece of advice, or just something like for us going forward, as this is kind of our last week, what would you say to yourself or to us from a perspective of just the beginning of our career and just decision making and stuff like that?
All right, I'm thinking. I would say, gosh, so many things I wish I would have known. I would say have tenacity and resilience, because things happen in your personal life, in your professional life. And you have to be able to come back from that, and you have to push through it and get on to the other side. And at the moment it's happening, you think it's absolutely, without a doubt, the worst thing that could ever happen, and how will you come back from that? But after you sort of wallow in that for a while, which is allowed, you then have to know that in fact you can get through that. So those skills, for whatever you decide to do, will serve you well. And then the other thing I'd say is, if you decide to do graduate work or any sort of graduate degree, go to the best place for it that you can. Because we're in a competitive world, and if you have the luxury of getting in a couple different places, try and find the one that gives you the skill set that you need. And then the last thing I'd say is cyber. And cyber, we can't fill the jobs. All the studies out there right now are that we are going to hit a wall when it comes to hiring the talent we need to deal with cyber threats and cyber terrorism. So if that is something that you think you like or could like, it's an amazing opportunity. We're struggling as a country just to fill those roles. I would never do that. So let me be clear, I'm giving this advice. I would never go into that field because it's not sort of what I am and what I like, but it is an amazing opportunity. And anyone can get like a 1-year, 2-year certificate. They're all over the place now because we can't fill those jobs. So.
I would say, I would add to that, give yourself some grace. I think one thing we all have a tendency to do as high achievers is to think that whatever just happened is the worst thing that could possibly happen. And rarely is that the case. There are those, but resilience is probably the biggest thing that I would encourage you to develop, and to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take this moment, I'm going to embrace the moment, and then I'm going to move on, and it's going to be just fine. And the thing that you know at this stage in life, and there's other people in here that could agree with this, is that you will get through it, but you have to be strong. And you have to know yourself and be able to believe in yourself and know that you're going to make it no matter what.
Right. And not every job is fun. And it shouldn't be.
Oh, well,
It's
that goes
called-
without saying.
It's called work for a reason, as I continually remind my daughter and her friends who want to be the CEO right out of college. You know, it's called work. You should surround yourself with people you like and respect, and you should try to find something that you find rewarding. But sometimes you take a job and it's just plain work. You're acquiring a skill. It's great discipline for you. You don't like it. It's like you don't like it at the time. But afterwards you can say, you know what, that was actually good for me and good for the skill set I acquired. And I would say my waitressing jobs were probably, talk about learning how to deal with people.
Everyone should do that.
Yeah. So, and I wasn't even that good at it. So that made it even harder. But I do think that you're going to have jobs you don't like. Has everyone loved all their jobs? The people who are older here, I mean, really. You're going to have jobs you don't like. It's what you do with it and how you move forward.
Question back here.
Hi, I'm Sonia with Sales. I love the idea of jumping outside of your comfort zone and learning new things. How do you convince the hiring manager to give you a shot if that's not where your experience lies?
Well, you should, I can't talk for Dish, and Candy can. I think that sometimes when I wanted to do something different and new, I would take some course, like online course, or I'd go listen to lectures about it, and I could say, look, I haven't done this, but let me tell you what I've been doing so that I have a new skill set here, and I really want to exercise it, and I think I'd be good at it. So you can, in fact, find ways to acquire some of the skills you need, or you can outline the skills you currently have and why they can be leveraged, and you can pivot over to another job.
Yeah, you. One of the ladies over here asked how did you take a risk and do something you didn't know how to do? So my story about that was to redevelop Riverfront. When we purchased Riverfront, Stanton and I did the deal to purchase Riverfront. We had 222,000 square feet of shopping mall. And I had small children, and I had been not in the day-to-day operation of the business for a couple of years. And I had not done much construction in my life. But I knew what I had, and actually I should also say that the visionary partner in our marriage and our business relationship is not me. I'm generally the one that can do other parts of that. But I had a vision for what I wanted that building to look like, and I knew exactly how I wanted to do it. And I was hamstrung by the fact that I also needed to convince the guy who I live with, my husband, that our children would be just fine. And so I sat down and I wrote down for myself, because we generally have to have all 9 of those skill sets before we jump in. I wrote down everything that I knew and everything that I did and how I thought I could be the person who managed this project and still do the other things that I needed to do for the business and for the family. But when I wrote that all out, it was the longest email I've ever written, I think, to this day. But I wrote down everything that I thought about the project, everything I thought about my skills to be able to do it, and who I thought could do it with me, and how. And just doing that exercise, I didn't send the email to anybody. It was like the very beginning of computers even, so it was 97. But just doing that made me realize that I did know what I was talking about. I did have a plan. And I think when you talk about convincing the hiring manager to look at you, I think you do the same thing. I mean, I've done the same thing 100 times since then. You sit down and you think about, okay, this is my plan. Because you have to be intentional. The shit's not going to just drop in. Oh, sorry, not going to just... Okay, I was reminded that this was going to be streamed and recorded before I started, so you'll see how much that impacted my life. But it's not just going to drop in your lap. You have to be intentional. You have to think about, why are you qualified to do this? Look, you guys, we have the biggest opportunity in this company today that we've had since we were in 1,000 square feet on South Broadway. The next milestone, what month was that, Eric? Of 95, 96? That's right. I think Charlie was struggling with the date the other day when he at the ATM. So we've invented this company once and reinvented it twice. So we have more opportunity today for you to sit and go, everybody go home and think about, what do I want to do? You know, one of the questions I saw before the ATM was, are we going to talk about the opportunities for the people that are already here, right? And think about what nobody knows. Nobody knows. We have no idea what all the jobs are going to be that we need fulfilled. We know for one thing, we stay focused on what we do for our day job today. You're welcome. You cannot lose sight of the ball. So when we're redeveloping 222,000 square feet of riverfront, we are simultaneously doing our day job. And some of us were also simultaneously taking care of children. So think about what you can do, think about who you are and what you want to do, and then look at the opportunities that are available to you, and don't give up. The biggest thing I would say is don't give up. If somebody tells you no, what does that mean to you? To me, it means, ha, you just don't know me yet. Let me watch my smoke. And I would encourage you all to feel the same way. And the people in this room that have worked with me know that that's, you know, you just don't take no for an answer. I learned that from negotiating with my mom. You know, so you think about what the possibilities are, and don't limit the possibilities to this. If we did, that's the thing that when Kathleen was talking about why she wanted to come to be on the Dish board, that's the thing that I've always admired in my husband. There's no end to the possibilities. And I think one of the sad things that we've lost in the getting bigger is that people don't get to hear that, because he's very articulate about where he sees this company going. And I would encourage you all to think about how you could be a part of that while not losing track of what you're doing today. Because what he said was, everybody's contributing today. Whether you realize it or not, every single thing that every single one of you do, interns all the way to Eric, is to contribute to the movement forward of this company and where we're going and how we're going to get there. Brian's nodding. right? Next question. We have 7 minutes, you guys. We could talk forever.
So I do have a question from someone on the phone. So Megan Shear on our internal communications team wrote in, Kathleen, what's the biggest challenge you've faced in your career and how did you overcome it?
So in my professional career, the biggest challenge I faced is, just remember, I was competing in Washington, D.C. They're very they're academic snobs. I didn't have the pedigree at all. I didn't have the pedigree academically, and I was from Kentucky. So you'd say, really, that mattered? Oh, well, that was huge. So I had to, over time, prove myself by being better and build my credentials through jobs and people who would then say, she worked harder, she did more, she was really good at it.
She was really smart.
She's smart, hardworking, and sees through and can take it to the next level. And unlike someone who has credentials who moves immediately to this job, it took me about 3 to 4 times to get to that job. What I didn't know, that now I'd say it was probably an asset for me and not a challenge, but at the time it seemed like a big challenge, is that by this career path that I had to take, the hopscotching to get to the higher level, I acquired skills and knowledge that the person who went straight there didn't have. So by the time I got there, I was actually better than they were at the job. But at the time, it seemed unfair to me that I did have, I went to college, I went to law school, but not where everybody else in DC went, and that, alas, mattered. But it also then caused me to make some hard decisions and build a career in a different way than other people, and it meant making a lot of changes along the way just to build that network and to build that credibility and to have a network, and we haven't mentioned that, but a network of people who know you, like you, and it doesn't mean they have to be a mentor in the sense that you go to lunch with them, but it's a network of people that you've connected with. They know your work, they know your skill sets, you've supported them without asking anything in return, and they will then support you when you need it. And that network is also a very important piece of your long-term career. And we didn't touch on that, and you might want to.
I would like to talk about that, because I do think the other thing that I would say about people is, and I did learn this from Charlie, I probably wasn't as good at this before, talk to everybody. Don't, the proverbial don't judge a book by its cover, but you can learn from everybody, and you can, people can become, it's uncanny how small the world is, and it's equally uncanny how you see those people again later in a whole different place, and that you can learn from everybody. There was the very first dealer we ever had, I thought the guy's crazy. I still think he's crazy, and he is, actually. But he is crazy. He embraces the crazy, too. But I might not have ever actually talked to him. But Charlie talked to him. And I learned that early on in my career here that you can talk to everybody, you can learn something from everybody, and even when you think they might be crazy, there's lots of nuggets of truth in what they say. And if you dismiss people, my quick story on the beginning, I don't know how many of you know Doug Hartwell, our first employee who's still with us. Definitely kind of crazy. Walked in the building and said, "Who built that piece of shit trailer out there?" That was his version of hi. Charlie, Jim, myself, and Doug would go to trade shows, and we would show our product. And we had such differing, I don't even need to say this, we had such differing styles, and we all looked quite different, and we dressed very differently. And so there was somebody that wanted to talk to each one of us. We could get anyone in, we appealed to everybody in some form or fashion among ourselves. So I learned that the people that were talking to Doug in the parking lot actually had a lot to say. But the people that were talking to Charlie with the suit and tie on had a lot to say. The people that didn't want to talk to me, and I won't cite names, but there were people that did not want to talk to me because I was a woman. She can't possibly know what she's talking about. But there were people that wanted to talk to me. They had a lot to say. So all those experiences enriched my Plaid, and even though most of my adult career has been here, I've been able to do a ton of different things because I did learn that everyone has something valuable. Everyone, no matter.
Any last questions? Last one.
My name's Danielle, and my question is, you talked a little bit about what brought you to the Dish Board and why it appealed to you. Can you speak a little bit about your experience since you've been here and how that's compared with other boards?
That is a good question. I would say that each board reflects the DNA of the CEO. And I have one board that's quite buttoned up because that's the kind of company entity that it is. I've got another one that is very young, small, nimble, and that's a lot of fun. And then on this board, it is a wealth of talent and knowledge that the others don't have, just because this company has been around and grown and know where it wanted to go. And so the DNA of this board is relaxed, but also very disciplined about what it wants to do and where they want to go. And
financially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Financially, very conservative. And it's interesting. Financially conservative because of where they want to go. Not financially conservative because of quarter-to-quarter earnings reports. And they're two very different things. The quarter-to-quarter earnings reports are CEOs who worry about that. They pull all the stops out each quarter to try and come up with numbers to make what the outside investors want to see, the public wants to see. This company is very disciplined financially because of where they want it to be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There are very few companies in the U.S. that think that way. Most of China thinks that way, and that's who we're going to be competing against. But
They're looking at 300 years.
well, that's true. but so I would say with this board, it's very financially disciplined and deep knowledge and expertise that makes it different from these other companies.
I think with that,
Yeah, we're out of time.
Out of time. So let's give Candy.
Thank
and Kevin
you
a
all
round of
for
applause.
coming. We appreciate your taking your time today to listen to us. And if you have other questions, or you want to chat, we're available. We both can be reached by email and by phone.
Right.
And we obviously cherish what we're doing in all ways, and would be happy to share. So,
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.